Okay, we're back again here. Dave's still getting set up over there, getting the final screen up so we can see the dispatcher. This is going to be, I'm going to be switching screens left, right and centre, I think, in this one, Brad.
Yeah, I think so. Well, it looks like you're going to be having your hands full, but...
And it's a bonus as well, because I've remembered to turn my microphone on this time. Although, during the last break, I think I forgot to turn my microphone off. So apologies for everybody hearing us setting up and plugging this in and moving here, but we're just about going now in the chat. I think that last question off the wheel generated a bit of interest. What have you got there, Brad?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like, yeah, it took us a bit to get that question up, but the chat has absolutely gone off. And just reading out a few quick ones, I'd say DCC is absolutely heads over tails the best one there. We've got Jeff Burns, he runs DCC. Ian Barnes, DCC. I did notice Ken in the Facebook chat said he has DCC, but his club has DC. Or it might be the other way around, sorry, with that one. What about the YouTube chat? I see it also had quite a few there, Martin.
Yeah, there's quite a few there. Mark Stafford's got what's DC and a question mark, and that would have to come from Mark. But predominantly, yeah, DCC. There's Kenny who's jumped in here as well, and we've got him saying that since 1990 he's at DCC. So yeah, I think we got a bit of a response from that question.
I did. I actually just quickly tallied it up to the best I could. Like I said, the chat went off.
We'll see what question the wheel will give us at the next break. But we should get moving because you and I have been travelling a fair bit today. We started off in Queensland. We caught a flight down to New South Wales, to just north of Sydney. Then we had to get on this 26-hour thing. Now, I'm going to have a word with Gordy because I'm sick of going cattle class. But it was 26 hours then to the UK. And now we're back in the US. Now, where are we now? Where's Dave based? Is he going?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone around the world. I'm based in northwestern New Jersey, United States, and in the about 45 miles west of New York City.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so Dave's going to give us a little bit of rundown on his beautiful layout. And one of the things I must admit is I've been addicted to these rail fanning trips that he has on the side of the layout. I'm going to try and keep up with him as he jumps from screen to screen, because as you can see on the right here, there's a few there. I'll stop rambling on because Gordy will be getting on my back by now. And I'll hand it over to you, Dave, and you just tell me which one you want to maximise.
All right. Well, the one that I'm on here could be the maximum for the first half an hour or so. Other ones can certainly stay open. And then once I'm done here, you can split the screen between the dispatcher screen and the camera number 2 over there, where you see the Conrail locomotive and the mountainside with the signal bridge. That'll be the activity for the second half.
I'll try and keep up.
You sound like my dispatcher. It's perfect. It's all working very, very well. But hello, everybody. My name is Dave Abeles. I'm coming to you live from New Jersey, and this is my Conrail Onondaga Cutoff layout. The Onondaga Cutoff is a fictional bypass around the city of Syracuse, New York. And it's a railroad that's near and dear to my heart for a lot of reasons. That whole region is the area where my mom grew up. And so we spent many childhood trips on weekends up to see family and spend time up there around central New York. So it was euphoric times, stuff I look back on very fondly. A lot of great memories were made up there. Big family with lots of cousins, and my brother and sister and I would just play for hours in the woods. And I eventually could convince my parents to drop me off with a pack of cousins at the railroad tracks up at DeWitt Yard in Syracuse, New York. And it's about a 25-minute drive, so not too bad. And they'd leave us there for the day, and we'd putter around and do our thing, and then they'd pick us up at the end of the day. And so seared into my memory as a 10 or 12-year-old young man was these big blue Conrail trains, miles long, really just dynamic stuff, Amtrak trains with the passengers crossing over around things. And it was a very defining and exciting time for me as a young man. So when it came time to think about a layout and to build a layout, that energy, that magic was something that was special to me. As I started to learn more about Conrail and its story, it was a railroad born of incredible economic hardship, really. It was one of the largest government bailouts, the U.S. government purchasing essentially the stock of the bankrupt railroads that went into Conrail in the 1970s under federal legislation. And so they built this conglomerate, Consolidated Rail Corporation, hence Conrail, and now just Conrail as it's known. So sort of the storied history. People older than me, they have mixed feelings about Conrail because it replaced so many of their beloved fallen flag railroads. And so what's interesting is that for me as a child born in the 70s and growing up in the 80s and 90s, rather than see things fall apart, when I came of age, I was watching things come back. I was watching things get longer. Trains became big. There was bright new blue locomotives and new freight cars. There was new services. The piggyback services and intermodal trains were getting longer. It was an exciting time to be trackside. And so there was an optimism and an energy to the Conrail that I'll be able to do some live operations in the vein of what we've done on Facebook lately. Thanks to the magic of Gordy and Brad, Martin, switching screens as we've heard Martin speak of already. So it's a neat time. It's a neat time for the hobby in general. And I just want to touch on that quickly because our hobby is a very diverse group of people from all over the world, as we're seeing with NMRAx and Gordy Robinson's incredible leadership with the whole thing. And what a special time that even during a pandemic, even during some really difficult times for many people worldwide, we're still able to find community. We're still able to come together. We're still able to open our doors, so to speak, so that right now, everyone around the world who's watching this and anyone that watches the video once it's recorded is literally looking at the dispatcher screen that's right here. So you guys have a screen share literally out of my home, out of my basement. And it's such a remarkable time because our hobby is positioned to be able to take advantage of this. And I think that there's a real opportunity for us to use this as an opportunity to grow the hobby, to make it more identifiable to younger people and to open the door for everyone, regardless of age or background, to get a little more interested in railroad operations. I work for New Jersey Transit for the rail operations here in New Jersey that does the commuter trains, which has been a wild ride with the COVID pandemic right now. But we're handing in, we're doing what we can do. And with that understanding of operations I bring from work, several other of the gentlemen that I've known through my years, several of them work with me at NJ Transit, and two of them, Jack Trabacchino and Rich Wisniewski, will be helping us do some remote operations here so you guys can see how that works here in about 15 or 20 minutes. But before that, we get into that, I really do want to go through and give you a little introduction for what we're doing. So this is the former New York Central water level route. It's a fictional bypass around Syracuse, but it's a proto-freelance railroad where we try and operate it like the prototype was operated. And I think one of the goals is to capture the intensity of a trunk line railroad. So when you think of American railroading, or even European railroading and Australian railroading as well, there's secondary routes, there's branch lines, there's the local deliveries. We call it switching, some places call it shunting, but the idea is the delivery to customers. And then there's the main lines over which all of that traffic goes from city to city or region to region. What we're modeling here is one of the most important trunk lines in the United States and indeed of all of North America, the former New York Central water level route. So this was a 4-track main line, 5-track main line, even 6-track main line, all through the 1930s, 40s, and into the 1950s. And then as the American Railroad declined because of the construction of superhighways, political pressure, tax pressure, and just the economics of how we move freight in the United States, that was able to be downsized through centralized traffic control, which is a remote system whereby a dispatcher, instead of having a local operator at a tower to throw the switches and line the signals, now you've got one person miles or even hundreds of miles away that's able to do that through either electronic relays or solid state computer technology. So I'm actually modeling something that enables my use of this sort of technology because it's how the prototype actually worked and how it's worked for at least 25 or 30 years on most main lines. So the intensity of that trunk line, though, we're not talking about 8 or 10 trains a day. We're talking about 40 or 50 trains in 24 hours. The kind of main line where you go sit with your kids and you're almost guaranteed to see a train if you wait long enough. And long enough means an hour or two. So it's an exciting, thrilling kind of operation where it's very busy and there's always something moving. Construction of the layout, which you see in the background here in a better view as we get to later in the session, that started around 2008. This home, I improved the basement. It's an old farmhouse, so it's an old industry in a small farming town. But it's got the thick old walls with the field stone. So there was quite a bit of work to do to get the basement ready for the layout. And as we built the layout, we learned a lot about home construction, which has been its own adventure. But it's coming along very, very well. And the whole story of that was detailed in a model railroad planning article with Kalmbach in 2018. There's a track plan available online. If you were to Google Onondaga Cutoff track plan, you'd be able to see the track plan of the railroad, and you'll have a little feel for what we're doing today. So if you're interested, please go ahead and do that. But suffice it to say that this is something I've always dreamed about being able to do. And thanks to Jack Travachino, Rich Wisniewski, and the help of many other people, Alex Lang and Nick Anchant being two of the big ones for the signal system and the communications, we've really been able to capture a lot of what I hope to capture, which is I'm very grateful for their assistance because it wouldn't be possible without their assistance. Very, very much depended upon the expertise of other people in the hobby to sort of push this layout to the next level. And I defer to them on most of the technical issues because that's let experts be experts is one of my mantras on the Onondaga Cutoff. We use NCE control. It's the Power Pro system. So you guys are familiar with the typical NCE hammerhead. That's the primary form of control for people in-house, although we also use quite a bit of Y throttle, WITHROTTLE, Y throttle. It's an app on smartphones and on any sort of tablet, and you can download different versions of it, but basically it taps into your local Wi-Fi network, your wireless local area network, and allows you through the magic of JMRI, without which this railroad would not be possible, at least not in its current configuration. JMRI allows you to use a smartphone to talk directly to your layout through the command system and control trains. And that's actually a key for remote operations, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes here. So it's about a 250-foot main line. We run a 24-hour cycle of operations, including simulated darkness, which is an adventure. For people that come to the layout for the first or second time and suddenly the lights start to dim, usually catches them by surprise. But the railroad, working for the railroad, it runs 24 hours a day, and it's important to us to capture some of that energy with just the layout lighting and lights on the locomotives. The room is about 21 by 32, give or take. The exact dimensions would be available on the track plan from Kalmbach. So again, if you're interested in some of the details, that's probably one of the best resources for you. So the railroad was designed for this 24-hour operation. It's a double-ended staging yard. You can see behind me the railroad west end of the staging yard. So eastbound trains begin from here. On the other side of the backdrop is where westbound trains would start out. And these are control point locations. And just so you see what I'm talking about, all my control points are marked by a local control panel, an LCP. And with modern railroad signaling, these are the panels. Something similar to this is what exists inside the signal bungalow, the little silver shack that sits next to the railroad tracks. It's where the circuitry is for signals, switches, and communications. So this helps identify the location to operators and helps people see where they are as they progress around the railroad. This one is CP 295. I'm not sure if it's clear enough on the camera to see, but CP stands for control point, and that's Conrail's terminology, although most railroads use the same terminology. And 295, when Conrail modernized this railroad in the 1980s, they changed the lettered station signs. The station call signs used to be SJ and MK, and 2 letters or 3 letters, occasionally 1 letter in New York Central style. When Conrail updated it, they brought it up to their standards, and they renumbered everything in the milepost from Grand Central Terminal in Manhattan in New York City. So if you follow the New York Central Railroad out of Grand Central Terminal north on the Hudson River to Albany, and then west across New York State, the number you're seeing is the mile from downtown New York, from Midtown Manhattan. which is also helpful for operators because it sort of tells you what's east and what's west. The higher numbers are to the west, and the even numbers are further to the east. So as we built this and put it together, we decided to run the 24-hour cycle to simulate the real railroad operation. And the 24-hour fast clock makes that a lot of fun. We run on a 3-to-1 fast clock. So any operating session would be about 4 hours long, sometimes a little shorter, sometimes a little bit longer. But the idea is to capture that flavor with enough time for people to really settle into their role. And one of the things that we like to talk about with operations is sort of a niche of the hobby, as we know. And it's almost a role-playing game for people that love trains. So where everybody grabs a piece of paper and takes on a role as an engineer or a conductor, a dispatcher, a yard master, and there's other roles as well, train master, for example, that hands out the orders and that works with the crews. And so you try and role play a piece of the railroad operation, and it's a fascinating time. It's a lot of fun. And please feel free to reach out if you're in the New York area and you're interested in seeing the layout or being part of an operation. That's what it's here for. It's here to be shared. And thanks to the magic of the internet and all the help that we've had, it really is a special time in the hobby to be able to share it like this. So if we're able to do it, it's a lot of fun. So we added the NCE control system around 2012, and the beauty of that system is that it's been very robust. So it enables consisting of locomotives very easily and allows us to build and change consists for every operating session. So operators that come back month over month don't see the same locomotives each time. They're mixed up in different batches, and there's a different leader, a different trailer, and it's a lot of fun. So with that handles the train control and the block detection, which is how the system knows where the trains are. We'll talk about that in just a minute. And on top of the block detection, the next thing you need is the logic. And this is where the Digitrax system was superior. And actually the only system, NCE didn't have a system, so it was the only system that was available to me immediately. There are other ways to do it, and there's a lot of options now between LCC, layout command control, which the NMRA has been a leader in, along with Walters, and CMRI, Bruce Chubb's magnificent system that's existed for so many years and become the staple of so many different layouts, important layouts around the country. So there are different ways to do it, and there's no right way. There's just the ways that work. And what we found is very robust here on the Onondaga Cutoff is to have that NCE control system, and then the Digitrax system for signal control and interlocking control. So we use the Digitrax SE8C signal decoders to drive turnouts and signals. And you might say, well, we've got Digitrax and NCE. Those two don't normally play that nice together with control systems. And that's where the magic of JMRI comes in. The Java Model Railroad Interface, which Martin has been a very important character in, as well as several other guys, has been absolutely indispensable for those of us that love centralized traffic control and signaling and learning about it and how to incorporate it with operations on the railroad. So we use JMRI with a separate plugin, one port for the NCE system and one port then for the Digitrax system. JMRI is the brain and the logic behind the system. The dispatcher screen that you can see on one of the small screens and that we'll maximize here shortly, that's actually through the CATS, C-A-T-S, like the pet that so many of us love. CATS is the Crandic Automated Traffic System. Do it from the JMRI homepage, and I highly recommend giving it a try. It has a lot of the documentation, and the boilerplate for a signal system is already hardwired in, and you can select things to customize it to your needs, but it really takes away a lot of the hardcore programming, which is a pleasure. It gets you to operation much, much more quickly, which is a lot of fun. So all of that being said, it's a whole lot of talk. But the big thing that we wanted to talk a little bit about today is the remote dispatching. And Gordy invited me to be part of this primarily because of some of the stuff that we've been able to put together. Rich Wisniewski, again, one of the fellows that will be driving trains shortly here, running trains in American parlance, of course, driving trains if you're from the UK. He had the idea, as we weren't able to do regular operating sessions due to physical distancing, well, perhaps we could do a Facebook Live operating session and share the railroad that way, which is, well, okay, it's a novel idea. Let's give it a try. And so we gave it a try. And I had no idea how excited people would be to watch. So it's really taken off. And in the vein of the last operating session last Saturday, Gordy said, boy, it would be great to do a clinic on the remote operations themselves. And the the background behind it, how we get there, and then maybe a sample to see how it actually works. So basically, what we do is we have several control systems at once, which is why poor Martin has to switch screens later. But we've got the computer behind me, which is running JMRI and CATS. On that computer, I've also got Team Viewer loaded, which is a software sharing application that allows people with a username and password to log into my computer from anywhere in the world and view the dispatcher screen, also control the dispatcher screen if we set it up that way, which is fascinating because that enables anyone to dispatch the railroad on the computer. But the missing link was the radio. How can you capture FRS radio conversations through an operating session and through JMRI? We weren't able to figure out with any particular ease, and again, JMRI is open software. It's a wonderful piece of software. But I said, boy, there's got to be a simple way to tap into some sort of computer call. And it was Alex Lang, a good friend of mine from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who's regularly operated and dispatched the Onondaga Cutoff from Pittsburgh. He is a computer network engineer by training and by profession. And he said, boy, maybe we could use Skype. And I said, yeah, but how can you, again, you want the radio presence, and how do you broadcast that in the basement? He says, well, maybe we could use like a voice activation. And I said, yeah, and maybe we could plug it in to the side. So our little FRS radio, we set up one of these radios for voice activation, which you can access through the menu on the radio. We plug it so that the computer hears what comes out of the speaker port while the radio also broadcasts. Then you plug the output from the computer, which is the incoming voice traffic from the dispatcher or remote operators. That output from your headphone jack gets plugged into the input jack, the mic jack, on the radio. And so what that essentially means is that Skype has become our radio repeater. We have a little voice-activated set radio in the basement space. And so every time I use the push-to-talk button, which we'll use in a little while, this radio hears it. The voice activation switches on. It broadcasts, and the broadcast goes through the internet because that's where the speaker button is now wired. It goes into Skype, over to whoever's listening to the Skype call, and then they hear it on their computer speakers. They press a push-to-talk button, the space bar, or a radio in their particular case if they want to set it up the same as this. When they speak, it comes back. It comes out of the output jack into the radio. The voice activation turns on. And then this little radio will broadcast to the basement, the voice-activated speaker from outside. So it really is a neat way, a workaround to create a little local radio repeater, which works beautifully for operations. A few fellows, Bob Rodriguez down in the Washington, D.C. area, has done a really neat job with his railroad as well. And Bob uses Zoom for the call. And so he's actually, instead of Skype, he's been using Zoom to allow operators to have a window to see the layout, and also use Zoom for voice radio, with the voiceover. So there's different ways to do it. I think the important thing is to realize that there are different ways to do it and that they work. So this strange physical distancing time has been an opportunity for us to try new things. And thanks to the leadership of Rich Wisniewski and a bunch of people helping me put it together, we've been able to accomplish a couple remote operating sessions on the OC. So again, if you Google Onondaga Cutoff Facebook, you'll find the Onondaga Cutoff Facebook page. And on that page are all the videos we've done over the last couple months. They were pretty rough to start, so please be gentle on the first couple. But as we've gone on, they've gotten a little bit better, a little bit easier to produce, and we've been able to bring one or two people back into the basement as the physical distancing restrictions have been lifted. So far, so good. We're moving in the right direction, and it's been a lot of fun. So as the remote crews start to talk here a little bit, we'll hear a little bit of their chatter on the radio. I'll turn that up for everybody here once we move over to the other side to start running. But it's just a special time. And I want to talk a little bit more about the next steps. And, the beauty of this hobby very much mirrors the JMRI experience, where there's always an opportunity to grow. There's always an opportunity to learn. And so what I'm hopeful is that us as model railroaders and as operators, we're able to move in a direction where we come together. And whether it's timetable train order operation, whether it's switching or shunting in a yard, with a camera like we've seen a couple times on some of these live videos, whether it's using a dispatcher screen with CTC, all of these are legitimate ways to run your trains and to have a lot of fun. And this hobby it's about fun. And for me, it's very much about community. It's about coming together. And I think that we could use more of that in the world today. And I know that sounds maybe perhaps a bit corny and lofty, but I really sincerely believe that if we come together on whatever we enjoy together, if you focus on what we have in common, the sky's the limit that allows other people to come in and learn and enjoy and be a big part of the fun. And so all the people that have helped out with the Onondaga Cutoff, I feel really indebted to all of them. It would not be what it is without help of so many experts outside. And, to be able to participate and have an article or two in the Model Railroad Press with Kalmbach. In fact, I've got a book, the whole Model Railroad signaling experience, how we built it on the Onondaga Cutoff, with a bunch of photographs and thousands of words of manuscript and an actual how-to on how to build some of this stuff the way we did it here. That's currently actually being edited by Model Railroader, and we're hoping for a release in the spring of 2021 called Signals and Interlockings for Your Model Railroad or something along those lines. So it's been a real adventure, and I feel very used in the 1980s and 1990s. Now to be able to recreate a little bit of that here in the basement and share it with the whole world is a dream come true. It's nothing short of a dream come true. So without further ado, we're going to switch cameras here. So Martin, if you don't mind, what we'll do is the one that's labeled guest there with the locomotive, we can maximize that, or maybe we can dual screen that with the dispatcher panel. So people can watch the locomotive move and can also keep track of the dispatcher panel here on the left. That'll be an important part of what's going on. So as we get into this, it's important to understand what's going on in the dispatcher panel. So I'll carry this computer to the other side of the basement. If you want to switch cameras there, Martin, that would be great. And we'll go from there. So I don't know that you'll see much of my face on camera until the very end. So bear with us as we make the transition here, and stay tuned. I'll be right back. Okay, so let's maximize the CTC panel to start. I'll describe what's going on, and then we can make that smaller and we can maximize the locomotive. All right, I'll see you over there. All right, everyone. So what we've got, looking at this maximized screen for you all, is the screen that the dispatcher sees every time we are running the railroad. And this screen is important because this is very similar to what the prototype would see. And it's something that I just want to be very clear that what we're talking about is the white lines are controlled track. So that's track where there is existing train tracks, and those train tracks are linked in through the block detection system to be running mainline freights that are controlled by the dispatcher. So those tracks are currently unoccupied, and what those do is they really do show you the geometry of the trains, but only in an operational standpoint. So as you notice, you don't see any curves. You see straight segments of track that come off at sharp angles, and it's just a representation of what's actually out in the field. The signals are the small round dots that you see, and the crossover switches that you see are ones that are also controlled by the dispatcher. So as the dispatcher moves through an operating session with a mouse click, he can select signals and switches, line the switches for a route, and then pull up a route through the interlocking plant and across the track that links the interlockings together. The red lines are currently occupied track. So that occupied track is where trains are currently sitting. Base block detection means that every piece of equipment on the railroad has to draw a tiny bit of current. It's obviously no problem for locomotives. What we do is we install resistive wheel sets, and I can grab and show you one of those towards the end of the session, just so you know what I'm speaking of. But basically, you put a tiny resistor on the axle on each end of every freight car, which is an arduous task, but worthwhile because it allows the computer and the whole system to see where the equipment is. So even a lone freight car would turn on these block detection systems so that the computer is able to tell what track is occupied and what track is not. The green that you can see at the bottom right is track that has had a route pulled up over it by the dispatcher. By clicking on the signal after lining switches, that route is now cleared for train traffic. The engineer on site can see the signal. Most importantly for remote operations, using the TeamViewer software, every operator is also able to see this screen, and they know that if they're at that TV10, you see the symbol at the bottom right hand between CP295 and CP294. TV10 is a piggyback train on Conrail, and it's got a route pulled up. So the operator of TV10, and I believe that's going to be Jack Trabacchino, I believe will take TV10, but if not, it'll be Rich. And they're going to handle that in just a minute here. But they know they've got a route, so they can accelerate using Y-throttle. They're able to log in through the router using Y-throttle remotely, and they use Y-throttle from their home through my router to control trains on the model railroad while they're watching a video feed of this screen where the rear end of his train is as well. And so it really is a very efficient system. They all wish they'd have cameras in the cab, and that's sort of the next generation. So just to touch on that, I would love to be able to put cameras in the cab of all these locomotives. They're almost small enough to do it. You can do it now if you have a dummy locomotive on the front of the train, but my dream is to be able to have all of my locomotives that are leading trains equipped with a camera so that during an operating session, it's seamless, whether it's operated on site or whether it's operated through the internet from anywhere in the world. So just an exciting thing and an exciting time with a lot of potential going forward. And without further ado, I'm going to jump on the radio here, and we're going to run some trains so that you guys can see what's going on. Martin, if there's a way to make this screen about half the size that it is now, and then to maximize the other screen with the locomotive or make the two of them the same size, that would be beautiful. And I'm sure whatever you come up with will work just fine. So you'll be able to see, the goal of having both screens is so that you can see the train move, but you can also see the corresponding change in the panel here that we're looking at. So the screen with the locomotive on it shows a locomotive that's going to be labeled YAON20, which is a yard job on the Albany Division out of Onondaga Yard. And that's where we are on the screen. And it's a little red line in the top left of the screen by CP282. And we're going to be able to move that as the remote operators move it. They're going to talk to the dispatcher, and we're going to hear the conversation to make that happen. And you'll watch him enter the interlocking and then be able to reverse out to the North Runner all remotely. So all I'm doing is sitting here in the basement, setting things up. The dispatcher and the operator are both nowhere near my home, both about 30 miles away for today's session. And it's pretty remarkable to watch.
Onondaga Utility, all right, Mohawk, we are clear to get going here. Clear to pull it up, and let's get some movement as we discussed. Here we go. Onondaga Utility, we'll get TV10 on the move here at 294. In the ON20. Yes, sir. We'd like to come off the South Runner, go west into the pocket, and reverse for the North Runner at B282.
So what we're hearing, guys, and you'll see the locomotive, the blue locomotive.
20 South Runner to the North Runner through the pocket at 280.
Is going to move here, and you're going to see on the top left of the dispatcher screen at CP282, the dispatcher will pull up a signal. There he goes. So that signal just got pulled up, and it's red over flashing yellow in the field. But the important thing is the crew can now see it. There's his bell. And we're watching engineer Wisniewski move the ON14 with engine 1931 into the interlocking. And you'll watch the interlocking turn red. There it goes as he enters the interlocking. Now, if you glance back over to the dispatcher screen, the other thing we're seeing here is that he's pulled up a route for a through train. All right, Martin, if you want to switch over to the other view, here we go. So now, everybody, we're watching the local, and he's coming through the plant there at CP282 now on the north front. So the dispatch is thrown the switch, and that locomotive here will come back into view on the other guest screen here. Yeah, the timing is good because here comes TV10. So if you're looking at the layout view, TV10 is coming through the plant at 282. And again, as he comes through, you'll watch the track behind him go back to white.
Utility. Roger.
All right. So what we've just seen is the small sample. We've got a few more trains to run here so you guys can see them come through. And, the goal of the sessions is for the locals to run out and around the mainline trains as needed. So it does, occasionally get very, very congested, which is a lot of fun. And it allows us to really do a lot of fun things one way or the other. And I think it's important to note again, that we've got, an opportunity here to really push the hobby in a new direction. So the prototype railroads, the class 1 railroads here, are very consistently running trains remotely, just like this. So it's and here we go. Here now, if you look at the dispatcher screen, it's CP280. We're watching our local now go through CP280 at the top of your screen. The red location is the occupied track. You see the white behind it as it leaves that block. And now it comes down, and now he's headed onto the east lead. And once he's clear of the interlocking plant there, beyond the signals, it snaps back up to white, as you see there now.
Down here on the east lead. ON20 tied down on
So pan around for you guys here so you can see a little bit of what's going on. If you're looking at the guest screen, a little bit more of the layout to be seen here. And so, to be clear, it is a lot to keep track of. At this point, we're using multiple systems to be able to keep, and then when we're trying to incorporate a camera, which is obviously necessary for the what we're seeing online here, it's a balancing act between all these different things. But I think that the point is that there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this in the hobby, and it's an opportunity for all of us to learn and grow as we're moving forward. Nothing stays the same for long, and this hobby, thankfully, is an amazing ability to continue to keep growing. There's so many different ways that we can keep coming together with this. Yep, sounds like another train coming. There we go. Sounds like 2 trains are coming. So one of the tough coordination efforts that we have to do as remote operators is remember that the audio feed is difficult to put together, because when you have multiple devices all speaking at the same time, you can get some feedback in the layout room. So it's important to either turn the volume way down or mute it entirely, so that there's no chance of having that feedback loop and that hard, nasty sound that comes out when you get multiple microphones open at once and they sort of feedback off each other. So that's one of the challenges, and that was probably the hardest thing to figure out with the Skype, was that you only need a tiny bit of volume on the Vox radio in order for it to broadcast. If you turn it up too much, you just get garbled information. And you actually heard a little garble on the radio from my end because I'm talking through it over here. And with this other feed open, it's a little shaky on how it's handling it. So there's always adjustments we can make. The key is to be open to those adjustments and to trust people in the hobby that you can rely on to sort of guide you through things when you have questions. JMRI is a wonderful resource, and the support group is really second to none. So they have a groups.io page, if I'm not mistaken, but through the JMRI page, you have a lot of opportunity to learn. I know I've seen Martin and answered lots of questions. Dave, also in Australia, has been a very big question answer on the NCE page as well. So people have opportunities to give back, and the wealth of knowledge is truly incredible. It's a wonderful time to be in the hobby, to me. So right now we're looking around and I don't see any green signals or anything. Let's go back here and take a look at our westbound bridge and see what we got. There's our signal bridge there. And if we look back at the dispatcher screen, guys, what we're seeing now is the Mohawk dispatcher is lined a crossover route at CP277. And we're watching a train called, looks like SECN. I can't quite read it there. But the name of the train is less important than the fact that the train is there. And that's the red line that you see. So as he comes up the hill and crosses into CP277, you'll watch the red line now cross from one track to the other. There he goes. He's now started into the interlocking plant. And is proceeding into the next block. And as we're looking here, we can certainly see our signal bridge here. And these signals here, top to bottom, you see they're all red. These are all red. Those are all red. Those are called stop signals. And it's a big no-no to pass a stop signal without permission. You need to get authority from the dispatcher to pass it verbally or by signal indication. Each other. Right here at CP 282. I don't think I'll be able to zoom in for you on this, but at the far right-hand corner, you can see the signals at CP 280, just barely little dots on the screen. You can see the bright green up top there. And that green tells you that we've got an eastbound train, and I'm hearing them climb the grade right now, actually. So let's scroll back this way and take a look. And there's our headlight. And again, as you're watching this, the shapes up front. It's a golden age in the hobby, you guys. This the stuff that's available off the shelf is just incredible. It's an auto train, vehicle train. We call them the multi-level trains in the United States. These are auto rack cars, which carry finished automobiles from place to place, whether they're imported on the coast to the middle of the country or made in America and then shipped overseas. This is the way most automobiles travel in the United States now, if it's over a few hundred miles from the factory, from the dealership. And so this train, as you can see, has got some manifest on the back end as well. So box cars and such, tank cars. In the 1990s, Conrail ran all sorts of freight across this route. And so we try and emulate those consists as closely as possible. And there goes the rear end of our train with a little marker there on the last car, a little end of train device.
FSD signal indication at CP 274, okay to bring it all the way east. FSD CP 274 signal way east. Thank you.
All right, so if you look closely on our screen now, everybody, now you see that the dispatcher's pulled up a westbound route. We've got a red signal up top, a yellow one in the middle, and a green on the bottom. It's called medium approach medium. That's the aspect. Aspects are how signals appear. And the indication is a rule in the rule book. And that rule conveys the information on how to operate your train given the signal. So there's a speed limit associated with that color aspect there. And then the route is already lined by the machine. So that means we got a westbound train, and it looks today like we got a little excitement for you guys. We've got some CN power. Not uncommon in central New York, but still cool to see. So for all of our Canadian, a nice little train to round us out and finish up our session here. Watch the signal change. And if you look at the screen to the top left, we can see that he's going to cross over. The dispatcher screen to the top left, I should say. As he enters the interlocking, he'll take the switch there. And you'll see the engine guide to the left, going from track 1 to track 2 in a west direction on his way to Buffalo. And probably back to home rails, given the Canadian National power. Some lumber in this train. A few auto parts cars coming up here. There's one and another. And it's not a Canadian National caboose, but it is a Canadian National last car with his end of train device. And there he goes on his way west and out to the western horizon. So that wraps us up for today on Conrail's Onondaga Cutoff. I want to thank Gordy Robinson again for taking a chance on this crazy setup we have here. And thank Martin and Brad for all their work on the ground to make this happen. And I know there's a bunch of people behind them also helping out. So this is just a special time. I'm grateful to be included, thankful to be part of the whole movement. And I wish everybody the best. Hang in there. You know, we're going to get through this wild COVID time. But it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Conrail Onondaga Cutoff. I'm Dave Abeles, and I wish you all the best. Take care.
There, Brad.
I do. I'm still trying to get my head around it.
Yeah, right.
I think
I've got one question to fire it off for Dave. What's the furthest distance from your layout you've ever had an operator?
We've had operators from as far away, counting the dispatching. We've had dispatchers in Jacksonville, Florida. So I had to measure that on a map, but it's probably close to 1,000 miles from here for the dispatching. We have done operators from as far away as Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is about 400 miles from here. And I was talking with Gordy earlier, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to give it a try and see if we can do it from 11,000 miles away from a certain Australian place.
Well, we've been thinking about that while you've been going through your presentation. There's a couple of people over here I know that would be itching to get at the trigger to jump in the opposition. As you can see, Brad's putting his hand up. I mean,
well, splendid. I would be open to that, and the curious thing will be a little bit check out the delay, but I do believe we can probably work around that, and it's let's give it a try. I mean, the sky's the limit, so I'm really looking forward to it. I know Speed Muller was also talking about getting involved, so we have some opportunities here, I think, to really bring things together.
I think not only are you going 11,000 miles to come over and get an Australian involved, but you're actually going into the future, because we will be driving the trains the day before you.
Where are you from?
I'm up in Queensland, just south of Brisbane.
Okay. Yep. My uncle, my dad's brother, spent his whole adult life living in Adelaide. And actually became an Australian citizen. So I've been to Adelaide a couple times and traveled around the nation.
It is, and I think we're going to be getting a few more sessions like this. But anyway, I'll hand it back over to Brad, because I know he's been scribing some questions there out of the chat.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Definitely. Thanks again, Dave. Always interesting. I see Andy over in the UK has a question, and I actually thought about this one too. Could you incorporate Wi-Fi cameras into the locos, and would you be able to cope with the bandwidth needed for that, along with everything else that you've got going on?
The bandwidth is a big question, and that's something that we need to focus on going forward. One of the challenges in Western New Jersey, and it's ironic, because we're 45 minutes from New York City, which you would think would be cutting-edge technology. Well, 45 miles is a long way in the United States, because it's night and day, and it's been slow to come. The high-speed internet has been slow to come to our area. So what we're dealing with is a simple cable modem. I've purchased the 100 megabytes per second service, and it works fine at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday like it is now. But if you try and do this at 6 or 7 p.m. on a Friday night or Saturday night, when the whole rest of the town is on the cable trying to download this, that, and the other, there can definitely be some snafus. So a lot of it's going to have to be catch as catch can, and we're going to have to sort of learn by experience. But I think there's at least room for a little bit of the Wi-Fi camera in the cab. And given the working signal system, there's no better way. I mean, can you imagine running a train on the Onondaga Cutoff by signal indication in the cab? that blows my mind. Like that's the coolest thing I've ever heard of.
So, it is.
So we have to. That's the goal, and perhaps we'll start with the dummy locomotive we can put in front of the powered consist, just so that people have a view. But my long-term goal is to be able to put a tiny camera in the engineer's windshield so you can see the nose and you can see the aspects and you can watch meets in real time. It gives me chills. Like, it is such a cool time for this hobby. We're right there.
It is definitely.
So and again, Martin, Brad, Gordy, your leadership in bringing something like the NMRAx to the forefront here with the exposure it's getting. Congratulations. It's awesome.
Thank you very much. And of course, what we're doing would not be valuable without presenters such as all the people that we've had on since we've started. And we appreciate your time and patience and setup. That was a very interesting clinic. We're getting close to the end of the hour, so I'd invite you to go over to the chat either in Facebook or YouTube, and I would say there is a heap of people there that will have 101 questions for you there. But before we go, we've been doing this thing called the Wheel of Chat, so we'll just have a quick spin here and see if we can get something else out. It's the first time we've been doing that, so basically everybody in the chat, whatever subject the wheel comes up with, you guys comment on it while we get Randy set up for the next clinic. So let's hit the wheel.
Splendid.
And
take care, everybody.
See you, Dave. And what do we got? Oh, here's the classic question that we put in there, Brad. To the last NMRAx convention to get this answer. So let's see what people come up with in the chat, and we'll see if Gordy actually replies to this one as well.
Sure, that's probably got his attention. So we'll jump over to the break.
We will. We'll hit the break now, and we'll be back in a few minutes.